Welcome to the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast with Dr. Thomas Hemingway. Let's go. Aloha and welcome, guys. Super pumped, super grateful to be back here with you for another episode of the Modern Medicine Movement Podcast. Can't wait to get into the topic matter of the day because this is something you guys asked about. You know, it's so cool that you guys are reaching out and telling me things that you want to know because I can direct this specifically to you and your questions and your desires and what health topics you want to learn about. So this is another one of those episodes. Can't wait to get into it. And just before we do, just wanted to shout out to all of those that were with me a couple of weeks ago at Align Ambition event. Oh, that was such an amazing event in Scottsdale, Arizona. Oh my gosh, so fun to be there with you guys in person. I did a keynote speech, as many of you guys know, that was entitled How to Thrive and Not Simply Survive in Life. And I talked about 5 amazing, powerful pearls that will get you on the road to optimal health. So if you missed out on that, don't worry. You can still get access to it. Not only to my speech there, my talk, which was, I've heard some great feedback. Thank you so much, guys, which was great. But also the other 9 speakers that were up there with me, including the likes of Amber Lee Lago, the amazing Brooke Hemingway, Dave Hollis, Patrice Washington, Jasmine Starr, so many great people, Heidi Powell, Alejandra Crisafoli, just an amazing event, Tiffany Peterson. Oh, these folks are just incredible. And you can still get access to it. It's not too late. So hop on over there to aligneventslive.com. You can get access to the whole event, as well as if you act quickly, you can even get the event actual book that goes with it. It's an awesome program book where you can take notes. You know, the workbook, we have a limited supply, so you better hop on over there quick and we'll mail it out to you, aligneventslive.com. So super pumped for that. Hopefully you can access that. Just an amazing couple of days of just inspiring, educational, move the needle type content. So amazing stuff. I am so excited to also announce my upcoming book, Preventable. Many of you guys have heard about this and seen recent Facebook posts where I'm asking you for your input on the title and the cover, which hopefully will have this book out to you this summer. It's just a lot of process involved, you know, my first book, and I'm just learning about all the editing that has to go into it. I got it with an editor that's helping me go through it. It's going to be awesome, just incredible. I'm so grateful to get this out to you guys, and I appreciate your feedback along the way. And if you want to know more and know when and what and all that, just make sure you sign up for my free weekly newsletter, Thursdays to Thrive with Dr. Thomas. If you haven't signed up yet, you can hop on over to my website, modernmedicinemovement.com, and just scroll down towards the bottom. There's a link where you can just type in your email address for my free weekly newsletter and get all the down low on all the upcoming events, the upcoming book, of course, as well as I have some courses coming out. I got one on the website already, a link to that on modernmedicinemovement.com. It's my course on stress and how to optimize it, make it work for you. Super affordable, less than $30. I'm going to have several others which are going to be specifically on these 5 pillars that I talk about that are just powerful, powerful pearls which you can apply to your life simply and without a lot of investment. Most of them you can learn these really important foundational principles, and to apply them is fairly inexpensive, if not free. These are my other courses coming up on sleep as well as food, food as medicine. That's a course that I'm doing for you, as well as on movement or exercise and gut health. Those are all coming to you in the next several months. They will kind of amp us up for the release of my book, and they will go along really well with a lot of the subject matter. Of course, the book has lots more in-depth kind of, randomized control trials, if you will, the latest and greatest research, which I love to share with you, which is how I came up with all this stuff. This isn't just stuff I dreamt up. This is actually based on the available evidence, which is so cool because it actually works. It actually works. It moves the needle. So I can't wait for you guys to get these courses upcoming. Just be sure to sign up for the newsletter. Hop on over to the website. Get the stress course now. It's less than $30. And with your first course purchase, I will give you a free month subscription to my upcoming VIP group called Thrive with Dr. Thomas. That's going to be coming up in the next month or two. We're just kind of getting all the final prep for that. It's going to be amazing. We are going to have a monthly 1-hour Zoom call with you guys where you can participate, ask questions live. I will also have lots of additional content there. I will have weekly office hours where I will answer your questions, get back to you. And I will also, on the other 3 weeks of the month, we'll also do lives for you guys as well on topics that you're interested in. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be super great to see you guys there in my VIP group, Thrive with Dr. Thomas. More information coming up on that soon, but I will give you a free month with your first course purchase. So that's going to be amazing. Can't wait for that. Super exciting, guys. It's just, a lot is coming up in the next few months, and I am pumped. So anyway, thank you in advance for listening to this podcast. If you have not already, jumped on over there to Apple Podcasts and written a review, please do so. It so helps get the word out. So appreciate you guys sharing this out on Instagram and Facebook. Feel free to tag me at Aloha Surf Doc or at Modern Medicine Movement. I will thank you personally. And this just really helps. Write that review on Apple Podcasts. That gets the word out. Scroll down to the bottom where you see those 5 stars. Click on the one farthest to the right, and then just type a quick review of what you're loving, what you're enjoying, what's been helping you. And I would love to hear it. I read each and every one of those. So thank you so much in advance. I'm so pumped to be able to just hear from you guys. It's so awesome. And right now we're coming at you to share this week's topic, which is on the most prolific, the most abundant protein in our entire body. It's the stuff that literally holds us together. It makes us human and not flopping around like fish, although fish have this stuff too in the skin, or the scales, I should say, as well as their spine or their bones. They got this stuff too. This is none other than the hip topic of collagen. Collagen is amazing because it is literally that stuff that keeps us standing upright, that gets all of our organs in the right place and holding them together and holding our form, our shape. It's amazing. It's literally the most abundant protein in our entire body. So is it important to talk about? Well, heck yeah. Holy crap. It is the glue that holds us together. And it is what allows us to stand upright, as it is the primary component of our bones, our muscles, our connective tissue, joints, tendons, ligaments, our skin, of course. Yes, for how we look, if we're looking good with minimal wrinkles. Check me out. If you're listening and watching on YouTube, you can see how many wrinkles I got, which is, considering I've been in Hawaii Nei for 30 plus years, I would say not too bad considering I'm approaching 50. And I think I'm doing all right. And I take collagen. I'll tell you a little bit more about why and what later on in this podcast and how I came to that conclusion. But for now, I just want you to realize how dang important collagen is to each and every one of us. It's literally 1/3 of all the protein in our entire body is exactly that, is collagen. Now, you may have heard that there are several types of collagen. Yes, there are about 30 types, depending on what source you read and what date that comes out, somewhere between 28 and 30 types of known collagen in humans. There's probably more, but the 30 types that we know of, the most abundant, in fact, the type that makes up 90% of all the collagen in our body is actually type 1 collagen. Yes, Roman numeral 1, type 1 collagen. That makes up our skin, our hair, our nails, all the linings of pretty much everything. And it's just that structural protein, the matrix that kind of holds us together. It's actually pretty cool. If you were to look at a 3-dimensional picture of it, you guys have probably seen the double helix, so to speak, of DNA. That's those 2 strands that kind of wind around, forming this kind of ladder type matrix. Well, there are not 2, but 3 of these strands interwoven, kind of like a rope, or kind of like those of you that know how to braid hair with 3 strands. That is an amazing, amazing architecture because it is super strong and it can move and flex. And, as we, as humans, want to be able to do all this cool stuff, like I hope you've been watching some of the Olympics that has been on for the last 2 weeks and coming to a close today, all those things that we as humans can do are only possible because of collagen. Collagen is that cool. It's that important. So type 1 is 90% of all of what makes us up, 90. And then you have type 2, which is the type that primarily is the cushion between our bones, those joints, that stuff called cartilage, the so-called shock absorbers, if you will. And that's super important for all of us that like to be active and walking and running and jumping and sports playing. And for me, it's all those board riding sports that you can twist and turn and surf and skate and ski and snowboard and mountain bike, and all these things that I love to do require healthy joints. So I'll get into it a little bit later, but I personally take a collagen that's of type 1 and 3, and then also a separate one that's primarily type 2, and I'll tell you why coming up. But I'll give you a little spoiler alert. I was not always a believer because, I've always been a whole foods guy. Like, why spend money on supplements if you can get it from food? And the bottom line is it's not as readily available, digestible through food. Although you can, chew on chicken bones and chicken cartilage and all that good stuff. You can make bone broth and kind of, suck or chew on that stuff left over, the gelatin. But the way to really make it well is you literally got to let this stuff simmer for 3 days, 72 hours, and get that to where it separates the collagen. And that's the stuff that you want to eat. And it's a little slimy. It's a little funky. If you haven't eaten it before, you're like, ooh, this is the stuff that I leave in the pot, not the stuff that I eat. And actually, it's good for you. It has a purpose. And, what I love about collagen is that it's not only essential for our bodies. In other words, we have to make it. It's important for us to be able to make it, but to supply our body with the raw materials is super important too. And we can get that from whole foods, like eating so-called nose to tail, the entire animal, which almost none of us do anymore. Although if we did, I think it would be much more healthful, if we're eating things like liver and heart and kidney and all this stuff, which we used to. Our ancestors, hundreds and thousands of years ago, they literally ate the whole animal because that's what had all the minerals and vitamins, were the organ meats and all of that. And they made bone broth and they ate the, chewed on the bones and the ligaments and the cartilage and all that stuff. So what's kind of cool about nowadays, how this is kind of returning to, I don't want to say in vogue or whatever, but it's kind of returning to our knowledge that using the whole animal, which I think is super cool with respect to our stewardship. If we're going to take good care of our environment and kind of use all the resources available and in a humane way, of course. I'm definitely not a fan of any of these, so-called CAFOs where they put all the animals in stalls and they never get out and they just feed them garbage like seed oils and grain to fatten them up. Like, I'm definitely not NOT, never a fan of that. I'd love to see a natural, herd out grazing in nature, eating all kinds of different green grasses and herbs and all these things, because they will have the nutrients that can later provide us with these phytonutrients, phytochemicals. The better we raise them, the more humanely, the more we let them roam and eat a variety of natural green stuff, not feed, not grain, not seeds, but the actual stuff that they're supposed to be eating out in nature, the better quality that meat will be for us. If you choose to eat meat, which I'm fine with personally, I eat everything, including tons and tons of fruits and vegetables. I'm definitely an omnivore, but we'll get into how we can also assist our bodies in producing collagen for all those folks out there who may be vegan or vegetarian, because they need collagen too. And unfortunately, you just can't get it from a plant. There's no such thing as vegan collagen. It doesn't exist. If you're buying something online that says vegan collagen, it's a scam. It just doesn't exist. Plants do not make collagen. But there is a way to kind of optimize the building blocks, so to speak, the amino acids that will later be formed in our bodies into collagen. We'll get into that in a little bit. But those amino acids primarily are glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline. Those are kind of the three primary amino acids that are found in collagen. And what's super interesting, which I didn't know about several years back when I wasn't totally a believer in supplementation, collagen supplementation, or really any supplementation, before I came to realize that unfortunately in the year 2000 and beyond, even before that, actually, the way that we were raising our foods was not really the best for the planet. We were not optimizing their nutrition or ours. And with the way that we were sort of growing our food and raising our animals, we were actually depriving them of a lot of the nutrients and hence depriving ourselves of these nutrients. And so a lot of what we eat today, even if it is indeed organic and grass-fed and finished meats and things like that, pasture raised, we're still missing out on a lot of the important and essential vitamins, minerals, and nutrients because our soils are so depleted, very, very depleted. And with respect to collagen, what's interesting is that if we get it from food only, our body's got a lot of work to do with respect to digesting it, to actually break it down into its constituent parts, which we will later use to rebuild. And it's a lot of effort in digestion, so a lot of energy expended in that way. And also, it's just not, the data shows that it's not as readily available than if you just use a collagen supplement. Typically, these are hydrolyzed, hydro, that just means with water. They separate these into the collagen itself. And they usually break it down kind of for us into a shorter protein, if you will, just several peptides long. Usually they're either dipeptides, tripeptides. And what's interesting is when you ingest the collagen this way, it can actually show up pretty quickly thereafter in the blood. You can actually measure collagen levels in the blood after taking a collagen supplement. And what's cool about this is that these collagen peptides found in the blood can actually act directly to stimulate collagen production. And it does this by binding to the skin cell called a fibroblast. The fibroblasts are what makes this cool glue that holds us together, this matrix. The fibroblast cell actually has a receptor for these collagen peptides. So when it sees them available in the blood, it's like, hey, we got to produce more of this stuff. There's more of this around. We need this. We need this for life. A third of our whole body's protein is actually collagen. We need to make some. So when it sees those collagen peptides floating around in the blood, it activates the receptor, activates the process of collagen production, and can actually boost our collagen formation in the body. So this is pretty cool. This is cutting edge research. It's been shown in the data that this has and is effective through collagen supplementation, and not so much, or at least as available and quickly to be able to be absorbed and used if you eat the whole collagen, if you just chew on, the connective tissue of the bones and the joints of the animals, which, probably most of us aren't doing anyway. And so what's interesting is that as we age, our production of collagen goes down. In fact, this, depending on what study you read, can start as early as 17 years old. So somewhere between 17 and 20, it's generally agreed upon that our production of collagen diminishes by approximately 1% per year. So you do the math. I mean, I'm 48 this year, and so that's a long time since I was 18. Quite a long time, 30 years. So I've been having my production decreasing for the last 30 years by 1% per year. So I'm down to 70% of what I was when I was 18. And that kind of sucks because I am at least as active now as I ever was. So I want to do anything I can to boost my collagen production because I need it. I want to have my joints able to do all the things I want to do, all those sports I mentioned, all those movements. I want to be able to pick up my kids without back pain, all this kind of stuff I want to be able to do until I'm 100 years old. And with the natural way that these things go, our collagen is going down and down and down as far as our innate production. And so anything we can do to boost it, I think, is a good thing. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in the podcast, not only with the collagen itself, how that works, but in addition, we'll talk about some other key nutrients that would be super helpful for our bodies as well. These are things like vitamin C. Vitamin C is actually an essential cofactor in the production of collagen. So we actually need vitamin C in our body to make collagen. You guys have probably heard of the illnesses like scurvy, where you get really weak bones and stuff, and kind of not a good thing. The sailors got it right when they had to travel across the Atlantic, to get to the new land here in the U.S. They didn't have a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, so they were suffering from this. And there's a lot of other folks that have had this problem over the years, but vitamin C is super important. So we'll talk about that. Zinc and copper and selenium and manganese are also important for the collagen production. So we will get into that. Lots of cool stuff to talk about. But I wanted to start with its sheer essential nature, that I can't overemphasize the importance of collagen in our bodies, being that, a third of all of our protein is collagen. 90% of it is type 1, super important. And then type 2 in our joints. Type 3 is also found in skin and connective tissues around our joints, our blood vessels, which is probably going to be important later as we learn about the cardiac effects. Our blood vessels have this elastic matrix there, and if it gets too hard and the vessels can't stretch and move, that can predispose us to more clogging of those arteries called coronary atherosclerosis. So collagen can actually be helpful and useful for decreasing our chances of cardiac disease or coronary artery disease or CAD. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll also talk about the difference between liquid collagen versus powdered collagen. Does it make a difference? We'll get into that. Just a lot of cool stuff. But before we get too into the weeds, I want to talk about some things that we can do to not only boost our collagen, but keep it youthful, healthy, and not damage it. Because there's definitely a few things that we can do that will damage our cartilage, which we don't want. And these are not the things you might think of. You might think of, if you're jumping around and, using and abusing your body through physical activity, this is bad for you. It's actually not. Doing physical activity actually promotes more fibroblast formation of collagen. It promotes healing. It promotes, youthfulness. There's so many benefits to exercise. Yes, there is some potential wear and tear over the years, but it's not really to blame exercise for. Actually, what's interesting is, I've been a physician over 20 years working in the hospitals, clinics, ERs, etc. And most of the people that I see with really bad degenerative joint disease, DJD or osteopenia, these are, when your bones get kind of brittle and weak and you have fractures. Most of these people are not super avid exercisers, actually, and they're not taking care of their bodies really well to promote healthy joints. Okay, most of the people that I see with bad joint problems, osteoarthritis, are actually not the ones that are quote unquote, doing their daily movement or 6 for 6 or 7 for 7. They're actually folks that aren't getting a lot of movement, and most of them, I won't say all, but many of them are overweight. I mean, in this country, 2/3 of us are overweight. So I wouldn't be stepping out on a limb to say that many of them are overweight. And that's just what I've seen clinically. And so some of the things that we can do to promote healthy collagen are these. One is, of course, related to our diet, right? If we eat garbage in, garbage out. That's a truism. I was taught it by my grandmother, and it remains true in this aspect. You can't eat garbage and expect to build your body out of garbage into that finely tuned, sports car, Lamborghini, whatever. My kids are into the other ones. They think Ferraris and all these other ones are pretty cool. And you can't build that sort of high functioning body with garbage. So if you're eating a lot of highly processed foods, highly processed grains with highly processed flours and sugars, guess what? You're not going to have very good joints. What happens, which is super interesting, you guys have heard of that measure of kind of your blood sugar over the last 3 months. That's called the hemoglobin A1C. That's often a better mark for where you are with your blood sugar balance than just a fasting blood sugar, if you will. And that is called a glycated hemoglobin A1C. It's basically measuring the amount of sugar that's sticky, not only to the blood cells, but sticky to everything. So remember back when you, hopefully you're not still drinking soda, but back when you used to drink soda, like when I was a kid, as a teenager, I had no idea. I drank soda like everybody else, not a lot, but my parents never bought it. But, if I was at a party or whatever, and I remember, I bought my first vehicle. I was 16, super excited. And one annoying thing that I just couldn't get rid of was somebody spilled in the cup holder. I think it was Coke or Pepsi or something. And it was so dang sticky. I literally tried everything. I could not get this out of my cup holder. It was such a, difficult residue to get rid of. That stickiness, it's kind of analogous to what happens in our tissues. That kind of stickiness occurs in our blood vessels, in our collagen, and it gets a little bit brittle. Imagine if you dumped some of this soda or other sugary drink on the pavement, or easier to kind of see where I'm going with this is if you painted it onto a balloon or a beach ball or something, then you let it bake in the sun. What would happen? It would get kind of hard and it would crack. And that's what happens when it sticks to the collagen matrix. It makes it brittle. It makes it more easily damaged. And that can happen even if you're not a diabetic. Most of us have no idea if we have a blood sugar problem because we go and see our doctor and he says, well, your fasting blood sugar, or she says it's less than 100. So you don't have diabetes, but once it gets over 100, then we'll start worrying about what to do about it. Until then, don't worry about it. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. You guys have heard me talk, I'm sure, many times about insulin resistance, which is super common. Nearly 9 out of 10 of us in the developed world, 88% of us have insulin resistance, which is sort of a precursor to diabetes, which means that our blood sugar is elevated over what it should be too often, and it is causing damage that we don't even know about, that we may not realize because our fasting blood sugar is normal. And this is that same mechanism through glycation, through that stickiness of sugar, sticking to not only blood vessels, but the hemoglobin in our blood, to the connective tissue, our joints, and it makes them brittle. It makes them break down more quickly. So this is actually a cause of the osteoarthritis, the degenerative joint disease that many people don't recognize. It's from this insulin resistance that is in 9 out of 10 of us. So if you need to kind of refresh on that, go back and re-listen to my podcast with Dr. Benjamin Bickman, who wrote that book, Why We Get Sick. And then I did a second podcast right after that where I explained a little bit more how we can get rid of insulin resistance. So go back and re-listen to those. Some of my most popular podcasts, they were awesome. I'm going to get Dr. Bickman back. He's such a cool guy, and he is like the world's leading expert on insulin resistance. So that's one of the ways we can help to preserve our well-functioning joints, is if we get rid of insulin resistance, which means ditching the sugar, ditching most carbs, especially all of the processed ones, with anything that comes in a package with a label that has flours, sugars, grains, sugar, whatever, high fructose corn syrup, heaven forbid. Get rid of that out of your life and you'll be much, much better off. I'm not a keto guy 100% of the time. I definitely love my fresh fruits and vegetables, but they come with fiber and they don't tend to jack my blood sugar up like eating something in a package that has highly processed grains, flours, and sugars. And so that's actually a cool experiment. If you guys ever get the opportunity to wear one of these glucose, it's a continuous glucose monitor, or so-called CGM. Super interesting way to kind of see how your body responds to different foods. And those that spike the blood sugar, those are the ones you should definitely avoid. And there's definitely some trends, and they're anticipated, right, across the board. Like if you drink a soda or fruit juice, almost all of our blood sugars are going to spike. Or if you're eating a processed sugary cereal or processed bread or whatever, most of us will spike with those kinds of things. But some may be surprising to you because we all are a little bit different. And so the foods that spike your blood sugar may not spike mine. And so it's actually kind of cool to know about that. So getting, or at least temporarily using a CGM or continuous blood sugar monitor is actually pretty interesting. There's a program out there done by a group called Levels, Levels, levels.com. You can hop on over there and check them out. You can be one of their beta testers. I know they got thousands of people already. They've got a bunch of data. It's super interesting. So check that out, levels.com. I'm not getting any kickbacks from them or anything. I may actually have the doctor on my show sometime because I think it's really inspiring what she's doing with this blood sugar monitoring, because it's providing tons of useful information. So check that out. I got a little off topic, but I think that's super important. Another thing, of course, that will damage our cartilage, our collagen, all of it, types 1 through 30, is smoking. Of course, smoking, I can't think of any potential benefit in a health fashion. Some people use it for anxiety or to lower their stress levels and things like that. I humbly submit there's a better way. And if you need help, there's a lot of help out there that's free. It's available. You can get patches and gum. 1-800-QUIT now is one of the resources, but there's many others out there. But smoking, not surprisingly, also damages not only your blood vessels and causes heart disease, kidney disease, high blood pressure, and a lot of other things, but also damages your cartilage. It's not good. So smoking, try to avoid that. Excessive alcohol, another one of these kind of no-brainers. Like it's, if it's not good for you in one thing, it's probably not good for you in something else. So excess alcohol also has been shown to accelerate damage and aging by reducing collagen production and damaging the repair mechanism. So this is something that for me kind of goes without saying, being 20 years in medicine, the people that I see that are either chronic drinkers or smokers or what have you, they always look to me like they're 10, 20, sometimes even 30 years older than they really are because of these substances, all of those toxins in smoking and in alcohol, etc. Like alcohol is actually a toxin, right? It's a toxin, a toxic alcohol. And so in my humble opinion, I'm not a fan. There's some data that shows that maybe you could have some benefit from a small little bit of wine in the evenings for the so-called, the antioxidants that are in there. You guys have heard of, there's been a couple of people over the years that have talked about the different phytochemicals in wine, and you can actually get them from non-wine. Also, you can get it from grapes, you can get it from blueberries. You don't have to drink wine. This is not a prescription or an advice to go out and drink wine. If you have a little bit in moderation in the evenings, and you may see some health benefits, but for me, I choose to abstain because really all alcohol is toxic. Alcohol is a known toxin and it damages so many things about our body. So I just avoid it, but in moderation in small amounts, and there are some potential benefits from those substances in like red wine, for example, but they can be found in other things. So there's an option for people like me that don't drink as well. But besides smoking, drinking, and high blood sugar or just insulin resistance, which may not be manifest yet in high blood sugar, the other thing that many of us have seen, which is fairly obvious, is just excessive ultraviolet radiation. I remember, being in Hawaii for 30 years and seeing lots of people who are sun worshipers, so to speak, who sunbathe. And for this, I kind of love our Australian counterparts' expression of this. They don't call it sunbathing, they call it sun baking, because literally you're out there just baking in the sun. And if you overdo it, easily this can damage your skin, right? I mean, it's no big surprise. It damages your skin. It can damage your DNA. Small, healthy doses, 10, 15, 20 minutes here and there. I try to get that because I love the vitamin D. I love all of the things that go along with vitamin D and just being in nature, being outdoors. But like you see me here, I almost always wear a hat. I'm clothed. I have, long sleeve shirt on, long pants if it's cool outside, shorts, obviously, if I'm in Hawaii. But if I'm out surfing, I'm fully covered. Like I wear, even in Hawaii, I literally wear a wetsuit because then I don't have to worry about getting baked in the sun. Like I wear full, short spring suit, which has arms. Actually, full arms goes to my wrists. It goes down to my knees. So I just have a little bit of exposed skin there. Most of it is actually covered with a wetsuit, and I can avoid over excessive sun exposure, which can damage my skin, damage all of ours if we overdo it. Some sun exposure each day for the vitamin D, for just the getting out in the bright light, which is helpful for our circadian rhythm, is awesome, but just don't overdo it, okay? So that can cause premature aging to our skin. We talked about the ultra-processed foods, which lead to that process called glycation, primarily because of the sugar being elevated and the insulin resistance. And it messes with a couple of things with the collagen's ability to produce new collagen, as well as messing with the degradation. It kind of enhances the breakdown and decreases the production. So anyway, too much sun exposure, no good. Smoking, drinking, bad diet, especially processed foods, are no good for your collagen. They're no good for the rest of your body either, but just thought you'd like to have some specifics on collagen. If you want to try to get your collagen from food, which I still try to do, bone broth is amazing. If you like small fish like anchovies, or sardines, which I never used to, I'm kind of acquiring a taste for them because they're super healthful, have lots of minerals and nutrients, and they're much, 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 much less likely to ever have a problem with mercury poisoning, which is typically with the bigger fish like tuna, which I really love, but I don't eat it very often anymore. If I'm in Hawaii, I'm eating it once a week, maybe twice. But if I'm in other places, like in the mountains of Utah or whatever, I'm literally not eating any fish at all because it's just not, I can't go catch it, so I don't really worry about it. But something you should keep on your radar. The big fish obviously are more prone for mercury poisoning, but the small fish where you eat the whole thing, like the sardines, these actually have a lot of collagen in them because you're eating the whole fish. You're eating the bones, you're eating the skin, the scales, all of that. And then, of course, for animal source of collagen, it would be the bone broth is the primary source, unless you're chewing on the cartilage or eating the chicken skin, which has a bunch of collagen in there. You just have to make sure you get the well raised, the pasture raised, organic, free grazing animals, because the others can have a bunch of crap in there too. So I wouldn't want to be eating the flesh, chicken or cow, bovine or otherwise, of animals that aren't well cared for, that aren't getting a good diet. In fact, later on when I talk about collagen supplementation, the ones that I'll recommend for you will be the ones that come from a good source, like a grass-fed animal, for example, not one that's grain-fed or garbage-fed, so to speak, because it does matter. I mean, if you're eating them, you're eating what they have also eaten. It's not just, what you're eating, but what you eat has eaten before. So it's actually pretty important to get well-sourced stuff. And this goes for plants and animals. Make sure the plants that you're eating are not exposed to a bunch of pesticides, right? You want to go for organic, you want to go for those that are well-raised, that don't have, the GMO things that aren't natural, that aren't having all the pesticides that are out there that they say are quote unquote safe, generally regarded as safe. The grass, GRAS, generally regarded as safe, doesn't mean that they are safe. Okay. So try to avoid anything with pesticides, herbicides, all this. Consider it kind of like the antibiotic for the animals, because they mess with the microbiome of the plant, any kind of pesticide or herbicide, in a way analogous to how antibiotics will mess with that animal. And if you eat, of those plants or animals that have been exposed to those quote unquote antibiotics, either antibiotics in cows or chickens or whatever, or in plants, the pesticides, that can also wreak havoc on your microbiome. So anyway, don't want to get too much into the weeds there, but let's talk about now why we would even want to take a collagen supplement. So I kind of, in the initial few minutes, spoke about how a collagen supplement, because it's already pre-broken down in its what's called the hydrolyzed form into separate dipeptides, tripeptides, sort of much smaller proteins than this very complicated matrix that's interwoven in our bodies. Because it's already kind of pre-broken down, it's actually super quick, super easy to absorb in the body. Like I said, the data shows that the blood levels go up. These blood dipeptides, tripeptides of collagen, they can actually signal for increasing collagen production in that cell called the fibroblast. And let me just share a few studies with you guys, because this is based on data. This is not something I just dreamt up, okay? And actually in the last few years, there's been much more data on this. When I first was looking at this, most of the stuff out there was for, athletic people, which is primarily looking at type 2 collagen. Now there's tons of data, dozens and dozens of well done, sort of highest level of evidence, the so-called randomized controlled trials that shares about type 1 collagen, which is 90% of what we have in our bodies, primarily in our skin, sort of looking at, I hate to say the vanity stuff, but the cosmetics of our skin, of so-called healthy skin. I'll share with you, there was a review done of 19 different studies, and this was pretty recently, where they looked at over 1,000 people that were looked at. And this was published in the International Journal of Dermatology. I'll put a link to this in the show notes, in December of 2021. So literally this was just published. This is hot off the press. As of 2 months ago, this was published, and they looked at 19 different studies. And it was pretty cool, because when they combined all this data, basically universally, they found that this was looking at collagen powder. But when they looked at it, these 19 different studies in the International Journal of Dermatology, they found basically favorable results in all of them. Like, this is pretty crazy. Like 19 different randomized controlled trials, favorable results in skin elasticity, right? That's what we want. We want our skin to be elastic. In skin hydration, being nice and sort of full and not wrinkly. as well as decreasing wrinkles. So in those three things, like I said, this study was looking particularly at hydrolyzed collagen in a powdered form. So that's just where most of the data is. A lot of folks will wonder, what's the difference? Should I take a powder? Should I take a liquid? You know, people are telling me liquid is better. Some people are telling me powder is better. We'll get into that in just a sec. But this was looking at hydrolyzed collagen, which is what I take, in a powdered form, and its benefits on skin hydration, on elasticity. It improved that, as well as decrease in wrinkles. And this was all recently published in the International Journal of Dermatology in December of 2021. So that's literally 2 months ago. Okay. And there's been a few others I'll share with you. This one was kind of cool because they looked at collagen. This was just about a year before. This was November of 2020. So about 1 year prior, in the Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology. And they also reviewed a bunch of studies to be able to come up with a conclusion. And this one had 10 different randomized controlled trials. And they specifically were looking at its effect on the fibroblasts, which was kind of cool. And those are those skin cells that I mentioned that actually make the collagen. And so they were looking at oral administration. So once again, the other one was also oral. So taking it by mouth. We're not talking about applying it to the skin right now. That's, spoiler alert, not really going to have the same effect. So there can be, mostly with the skin stuff that has collagen in it that you apply, mostly what you'll see as a result is just in the hydration of the skin, but it's not really changing so much the actual formation, production, the matrix, the support structures. It's more just a temporary sort of hydration of the skin. And, that's not a good or a bad thing, so to speak. It's just less potent, if you will. If you really want to get the full effects, like I said, of increasing the hydration, the elasticity, and decreasing wrinkles, pretty much have to go with an oral, take it by mouth form of collagen. So anyway, this study looked also at oral collagen. Once again, it was done in 2020 in November in the Journal of Cosmetic Dermatology, and they looked at 10 different studies and also looking at hydrolyzed collagen, which their conclusion was it improved the clinical manifestations of skin health, reporting the benefits of collagen supplementation, and they didn't see any significant side effects. But what was cool is they looked at how the collagen affected the fibroblasts, which were, those cells in the skin that make the collagen, and they showed that they actually increased the production. So not only did they did that, but they increased production, but also decreased the breakdown, which is kind of cool because it's sort of doubly powerful that they found. So super interesting. They're kind of coming up with mechanistically how this happens, but it's definitely been shown preponderantly in the research that oral collagen supplementation is helpful in skin, right? Improving the elasticity, decreasing wrinkles, and improving the hydration. So that's simply the skin. Let's go to a couple of other benefits. Excuse me. This is a cool one because especially as we age, a collagen supplement has also, and this should be intuitive, but not a lot of people talk about it, has also been shown to improve bone health and improve bone density. So there's this thing that typically after you're 50 or so, you start to measure it, bone mineral density. And what they've seen in several trials is that those who take collagen, especially those like women that are postmenopausal, for example, or older guys, it enhances or improves their bone mineral density. And this is super cool. So not just a vein, skin thing, but it also helps with your bones, which is not surprising since 90% of the collagen or protein, I should say, in the bones is actually collagen. So duh. Super cool stuff. This particular study was looking at taking 5 grams a day for a year. Okay. It just so happens that I take in my powder form exactly 5 grams. I'm sure this was not an accident, but it's been, usually the studies look at 2.5 to 10 grams and they kind of range. So not surprisingly, many companies out there will make their serving size about 5 grams, which is kind of right middle of the road in sort of the doses that were commonly used in the studies. This one was in the journal Nutrients, published in 2018. And the title of it was Specific Collagen Peptides Improve Bone Mineral Density and Bone Markers in Postmenopausal Women. And once again, this was a randomized control study. So really cool stuff. This was for 1 year. So here's a little piece that applies not only to collagen, but a lot of supplements people take. Some people are like, I want to see results immediately. And sometimes you will. Sometimes you'll see things fairly quickly on the order of weeks or months. But actually the way that collagen production in the body works, a lot of the, I would say these benefits are things that take a little time. Like if you take collagen for 1 month and don't see anything, I wouldn't quit. Like for me, especially for my joints and things, like it took a couple of months to make a difference. But now I'm so glad I did because I've seen the benefits, which is really cool. So not only good for the skin, but it's good for the bones too. There's another study I wanted to share with you, which I think is super cool because it shows benefits in taking collagen, not just skin and bones, but this actually looked at muscle, which I thought was super interesting because not surprisingly, muscle has a bunch of collagen there as well. But in this particular trial they looked at, this was the British Journal of Nutrition in 2015. Let me just read you the title. It says collagen peptide supplementation in combination with resistance training improves body composition and increases muscle strength in sarcopenic men, a randomized controlled trial. So once again, this is very good high-level evidence showing benefits of taking collagen also not only for the bones and the joints, but for muscles too, which is not surprising because what are muscles made of? They're made up of protein, right? They're made up of protein. And what they did, they took two groups of people. One just did the resistance training or the exercise with some weight, and the other group did the resistance training as well as took collagen supplementation. And the group that took collagen supplementation, this was a 12-week study, so it was a little bit shorter, but that's still 3 months, you know? And in this time, they showed that those that had collagen, in addition to doing the resistance training, which I would recommend for all of us, resistance training is the bomb. That's like the new, cardio. Like cardio is great, but some of us do too much cardio and no resistance training. There should be a balance. You should do both. And probably if you only have time for one, I know this may be sacrilegious, but do resistance training if you have to pick between resistance training and cardio because you'll get more bang for your buck. And there's lots of data that supports that. I talk about it in the book that's coming out, Preventable. But it's a really cool subject. And this was really fun to read that collagen also can enhance your muscle strength and other markers of activity in people that were taking collagen in addition to just doing the workout. So I thought that was really cool. Wanted to share that with you. So skin, muscle, joints. There's a lot of data on joints, actually. The one that, not only the bone mineral density that I reported in that study, but also in a super common joint problem. Many of you, including me, may have knee pain. In fact, right now, as we speak, I have knee pain. I can't recall exactly what I did, but I've been really active lately. I actually went climbing with my kids the other day, put my knee in some weird positions. I've been snowboarding a lot. I've been hiking and walking. I was just in Hawaii for a couple of weeks, and I literally surfed twice a day, every single day. And so I've been doing a lot of funky stuff. I did some skateboarding on my ramp. So I don't know what the heck caused my knee to flare up, but I'm actually having issues right now with my knee. So I doubled up on my type 2 collagen specifically for that reason. And the data is there. And this one was from a article published in the journal Applied Physiology in January of 2017. And they looked at 5 grams of collagen. And that's, like I said, that's a pretty common dose. They did 12 weeks and they were looking specifically at knee pain, both just in reported pain as well as function. And in their group that received the collagen, they had a statistically significant improvement in both the pain as reported on this thing called the visual analog scale. It's kind of like a 1 to 10, like where's your pain? And they reported improvements with pain as well as improvements in function. And it was statistically significant. And so their mobility improved, their pain decreased. And this was with 5 grams of collagen daily for 12 weeks. So this was not a huge study, 140 people, but I think it really proves the point that collagen can also be helpful for joints, both for pain. A lot of us have joint pain. I know I do. And so I'm taking my collagen. There's a lot more studies out there that show that. We talked about bone loss and its improvement in strengthening bone muscle mass. We just talked about in those folks with sarcopenia that were doing resistance training. There's another cool study that I found that shows how it could help with cardiac or heart health, because remember that type 3 collagen is found in the blood vessels. And so there's been a couple of studies looking at that specifically. It's kind of a little bit newer and pretty cutting edge. The one that I thought was pretty cool was reported, let me just pull this up for you, in the Journal of Atherosclerosis and Thrombosis. So it's sort of like the heart disease journal. This was published in May of 2017. And it says the effects of collagen tripeptide on atherosclerosis in healthy humans. And what was cool about this one, this one they did for 6 months. And they found not only improvements in cardiac markers like cholesterol markers, but also in decreasing the inflammation. Because we know that heart disease is basically inflammation. And let me just read you. It says that the results of this study indicate that the collagen tripeptide contributes to the prevention and treatment of atherosclerosis in healthy humans. So this was a pretty cool study. I don't want to get too much into the weeds because it talks a lot about different things that a little bit complicated, the way that they're talking about different receptors and the AGEs and things. And I don't want to get too into it, but what was cool is that they're showing improvements with collagen. And it's no surprise because type 3 collagen is found in the blood vessels, and you want your blood vessels to be supple and elastic, right? You don't want them to be hardened and more prone to the thrombosis, which is the blood clot or the heart attack. And so lots of benefits potentially for collagen, not just the obvious stuff, the skin deep, stuff, our skin, our hair, our nails, decreasing wrinkles, improving hydration, improving elasticity. There's also been some work, this is super new, just kind of like the cardiac stuff, but with gut health. And when we think about it, it's probably not too surprising because our lining of our gut, those cells there, actually have a lot of collagen in them and between them, keeping them together, those so-called gap junctions and the proteins there that are involved with preserving that lining so that it works well and we don't let a bunch of garbage through and stuff like that. So they're looking at it with gut health now. There's been some early studies. The one that I'm familiar with was done in folks with Crohn's disease. Let me see if I can pull that one up for you. This one was fairly recent, and they looked at type 3 collagen formation in Crohn's disease. This was reported in May of 2017. So this is a little bit more new, Alimentary Pharmacology and Therapeutics Journal. This was published, and it was basically showing that in Crohn's disease and other inflammatory bowel conditions, there's a problem with the type 3 collagen. It's not being produced as well, and it's being broken down and damaged, if you will, more readily. And that's probably not surprising because folks that have active inflammatory bowel disease or IBD, have a lot of inflammation going on, which is going to affect a lot of things, including the collagen. So they were showing that some collagen supplementation could help these people as well. So a little bit early, a little bit cutting edge still yet, not tons of data on it, but be on the lookout for more of that. So I've looked at some other things, which I'm not going to say it's going to be something that will promote weight loss, but there's been some studies that have shown that. And it's basically, I think I would look at it as you would with a protein supplement. In other words, protein in your body is satiating. So if you increase your protein, and collagen is protein, right? It's made up of amino acids. It's not a so-called complete protein because it typically just has 3 amino acids, not all 20. So if you want to get all of the protein, sort of a complete protein, if you will, whey protein is a great source. I take a whey isolate for strengthening my muscles. I'm trying to avoid sarcopenia. Okay, so I actually take a whey isolate as well as a collagen, hydrolyzed collagen as well. But some people will report weight loss, and that's primarily, I think, from the satiety that it provides and the protein intake, and hopefully eating less junk food too, because you're not, you're more satiated. A lot of people that I know that take the collagen, I do, they mix it up in a drink and it kind of gives them some satiety and kind of prolongs their window where they're not really eating much it kind of helps them because of that satiety factor. The good news too about collagen supplementation is I just don't see a lot of downsides to it, to be honest, other than potentially the price. If you're on a super limited budget, you may, instead of taking 2 different types like I do, maybe just take one type, and I would just take as clean as you can afford. Hopefully it's from grass-fed animals or marine, provided you don't have any allergy. The only real side effect, some people might have some allergy. If you have an allergy to fish or chicken or meat, those things, then you may want to get an allergy test prior, or consider taking one that is only from one of the sources that you're not allergic to. If you're allergic to fish, then take a collagen that doesn't have fish source of the collagen, or vice versa. If you're allergic to either chicken or beef, then you might want to take one that's just marine collagen. So those are some potential side effects. Sometimes people report a little bit of an upset stomach. I really haven't had that issue, but all of these studies I quoted, basically in dozens and dozens of studies that have been done, showed very limited, very low on the side effect profile. So generally safe for most people, not a lot of side effects for most. Obviously discuss it with your healthcare provider or your nutritionist or whoever you discuss these kinds of things with. But I think it's pretty safe, and I'm a fan. I'm a believer, not only because the research is there, but because I've seen improvements in my own body, and I ain't getting any younger like most of us. And I wanted to talk a little bit about specific supplements now, because a lot of you may have questions about this. What's better? Is it a powder that's better? Is it a liquid that's better? I would say the first and foremost rule that I would do is just read the label, okay? Read the ingredients. Sticking to a powder that has very limited ingredients, all of which you understand and can pronounce and so on, is great, especially if you can get it from a trusted source, a supplement company that has all of the rigorous, testing that they do to make sure it actually has what it says it has and all of that stuff. Plus, if you can get it from a good source like grass-fed animals, so to speak, if you're going to get the bovine type, which I have, and right on the bottle, I'm looking at it right now. It says it's from grass-fed bovine blend, which is great, has types 1 and 3 collagen. And it says it's bioavailable, and that's true because it's hydrolyzed. This one also has vitamin C in it because, like I said, vitamin C is essential as a cofactor in the production of collagen. So if your supplement adds vitamin C, that's fine. This one also adds vitamin E, and not a tremendous amount, but over 100%, as well as biotin. Biotin's been shown to be helpful for skin, etc. But yours doesn't have to have all that. If you just stick to hydrolyzed collagen by itself from a good source, that should be sufficient. If it has those extra bonus things, that's great too. I would try to avoid any that had artificial stuff, any artificial flavor, any artificial sweetener, sucralose, all these things, Splenda, aspartame, not a fan. Definitely avoid those because they're just not good for you anyway. So that's the caveat, especially with the liquids, is sometimes they add a bunch of other stuff, which may or may not be good if they're just adding some vitamin C or vitamin E or something like hyaluronic acid, which is great because that improves skin hydration. So that would be fine. But I'm not a fan of the ones that have tons and tons of ingredients because sometimes they include not so good stuff. So I would say powder versus liquid, it depends, right? Read the ingredients. Remember my rule, the 5 ingredients rule, which is really just simplicity. Make sure it doesn't have any bad stuff in there, artificial colors, artificial flavors, artificial sweeteners. Just try to avoid that kind of thing if you can get it. Also from a good source, grass-fed animal, so to speak, gluten-free, all that is great too. And make sure you're not allergic to it, right? Generally speaking, as sort of your go-to blend, I would go for one that definitely has type 1 because that's the most predominant. 90% of all our collagen is type 1. If they throw in a type 3 as well, I'm a fan because type 3 is important for blood vessel health. Like we mentioned, a lot of other things that are also good. Type 1 and 3, that's what I personally take. And then I take a separate one, which is a capsule, which has just type 2, as well as some other cool things. Let me grab it. It's got some of that other stuff that's good for healthy joints, like glucosamine, chondroitin, and hyaluronic acid. So that's a separate one that I take that's a type 2, which has those other 3 items which are helpful and healthful and are good for my achy joints. And I've definitely noticed improvements with that as well. So I wanted to share that with you. It definitely is not just powder is better than liquid's better than powder. It depends. You just gotta read the label. Make sure it has the good stuff in it. It doesn't have any bad stuff, right? Just to kind of stick to the basics. That's what I tell my kids. Make sure it has lots of the good stuff and either no bad stuff or very limited bad stuff. Hopefully no bad stuff, even better. And there's some other good things that a lot of the blends out there that are not actually collagen, but they're for folks that don't take any animal products, like vegans and some vegetarians. Look for ones that have the amino acids that you need, right? You want to look for glycine, you want to look for proline, and hydroxyproline. Those are the three primary amino acids that make up collagen. So glycine, proline, hydroxyproline, and hopefully they'll include something like vitamin C, even zinc, copper, manganese. Those are super helpful. Spirulina is great. It has some of these things there. You can get a lot of these amino acids from proteins in legumes or beans, so to speak. Just make sure they're high quality. Like soy kind of scares me because most soy out there is not well, cultivated. Most of it's GMO. Even the stuff that says organic sometimes is not the best. It's you got to be careful with soy. It's just, there's a lot of problems with it. I try to not eat much soy just because it's hard to get well-sourced soy. And so when I do eat it, I try to get organic. I try to get obviously non-GMO, but also I try to eat soy. And you guys have heard me talk about this before, but in its basically, in its form where it's been fermented, right? Like the miso, the tempeh, that kind of stuff, because it's already kind of broken down and some of the stuff is gotten rid of and so on. So it's actually a more healthful blend if you're eating soy is to have it in a fermented form. Lots of benefits to fermented foods. Check out my podcast that I did entirely on fermented foods a few months ago. But that's definitely something you want to look for, especially if you're looking for a vegan option. Like I said, there is a way. It's just not with collagen, right? It's taking the amino acids that would in your body make up collagen. These things that I mentioned, glycine, proline, hydroxyproline, and then of course the vitamins and nutrients like vitamin C, zinc, copper, manganese. And so look for that. Spirulina is often included, and that's fantastic too. But if you're buying something that says vegan collagen, just kind of beware, because that doesn't actually exist. It's not a thing. But if you find well-sourced ingredients that have these amino acids and hopefully some other things that are helpful, like the vitamin C, so on, copper, zinc, manganese, that's fantastic too. So I hope you found that helpful for you guys. Just want to check my notes here, make sure I didn't forget anything to tell you. As far as the difference between collagen and protein, I talked about that a little bit. Collagen is a protein, right? It's just not a complete protein. It doesn't have all 20 amino acids. So if you're looking to boost your fitness with muscle growth and so on, you may want to get a whey isolate or something like that. There's some vegan options as well, because they'll have more of those amino acids there as well. So collagen is not a replacement for if you want to build muscle mass, although it does actually help, like the study I mentioned with those folks that had sarcopenia, but it's probably not as good as whey isolate or one of these other isolates that has a more complete profile of amino acids, which is around 20 instead of the 3 that are primarily found in collagen. So it's not necessarily one or the other. It could be both. Like in my case, I do both. Making sure you have enough protein in your diet, enough vitamin D, which is super dang important for so many things, not just COVID, but for so many other things. Vitamin D is amazing. The calcium, the vitamin C, we talked about the zinc, super important to include things in your diet that have that as well. And just don't do the stuff that makes your collagen get damaged, right? Don't drink, don't smoke, watch your diet, try to not eat too much sugar and junk food, right? If you can, stick to a real foods diet. So I hope that's been helpful for you. Please share this out. A lot of information here. I realize I shared a lot of studies, but the bottom line is there's a lot of research that shows the benefits of collagen, both in bone health, in joint health, in skin health, right? improving the elasticity, the hydration, decreasing wrinkles. Like, who doesn't love that? So great stuff. Listen, re-listen, please share it out. Tag me on social media. I'd love to thank you personally. I'm at Aloha Surf Doc, at Modern Medicine Movement. Please hop on over to my website, modernmedicinemovement.com. Sign up for my free weekly newsletter, Thursdays to Thrive with Dr. Thomas, because I'd love to make sure you have all the info you need about my upcoming courses. We got one available now. It's on stress and how to optimize it. We're going to have many more soon. And then the book's coming out in a couple of months, Preventable. So can't wait to get that out to you. Love you guys. Thank you so much. A big, giant aloha, and just thank you. Mahalo. Until next time, Dr. Hemingway signing off. A big aloha.